Judith February, it's a great pleasure to finally interview you. I've been reading your thoughts, enjoying your tweets for years. You're an attorney, a lawyer, a columnist, an author, and a whole lot more. And we'll get to your latest position in a second. I'd like to get to know Judith a little bit. Where did you grow up? What made you go into law in the 1990s?
Hello, Mike. It's lovely to be able to chat to you today, finally. So I grew up in the southern suburbs of Cape Town, and as far as I can remember, I've always wanted to do law. I suppose I talk a bit about this a little bit in the book that I wrote in 2018, which was a kind of culmination of some of the work that I'd done at the Institute for Democracy in South Africa. And so as I said, as far as I've can remember, I've always wanted to be a lawyer. I suppose it's because I have a very stubborn streak, and B is because I want to put the world to rights, for better or worse. And so it took me on that path. And also I quite, the law has this sort of internal logic to it. Some people might not agree, but there is an internal logic to it. And I would like to think that I prize rationality and that I'm a rational thinker. And so part of the enjoyment of the study of law, of the pursuit of that, was about logic, but also my great love of the classics. And so I did Latin at school, and then a Latin major in my undergraduate degree. And of course, in those days, and I suppose I'm dating myself now, when if one studied law, you had to do Latin. So it felt to me like a very logical sort of progression. So it kind of encapsulated all the things that I love. Yeah.
So you've worked in the promotion of good governance, transparency, and accountability in your career. You've had your work cut out for you. They are, in my experience, these values haven't always borne fruit in a lot of what the governing party does. Are you a cynic, a realist, optimist, a pessimist, or does your view on contemporary South Africa change?
It does, Mike. And I suppose when I started doing the work that I'm doing at the moment, so I practiced law for about 5 years. So that was, doing the usual things that young lawyers do, divorces, sequestrations, and so on. And then started working at the Institute for Democracy in South Africa, which was really a democracy-promoting non-governmental organization. And I worked there until 2012 when it closed. And, we started doing a lot of anti-corruption work. The arms deal was the first big piece of work that I did at Adasa, and that was in 2000. And, there one could argue some of the seeds of what we're seeing, and I talk about this in my book, some of the seeds of state capture were planted at that time. So during the arms deal, and then also various breaches of the Parliamentary Code of Ethics and so on. And so, of course, over the years, we've seen this idea of a democracy, and we've seen it sort of its peaks and its troughs. The low point, of course, state capture. I'm a pragmatist, but I'm also an optimist by nature. I try to see the glass half full. So I'd hate to think that I was a cynic. And South Africa demands a lot from those who live here. And particularly the time that we're in now, in the past decade, it's been really difficult. But I believe in this country. I believe in its people, and also our ability to fashion a constitutional democracy, which is worthy of the sacrifices that so many people made to get us to that point. So I remain... it's difficult to be optimistic in the global environment, but also in the environment we're in at the moment. But I believe in this country, and I'm going to be the last one to turn off the lights. So,
I like what you said there. South Africa demands a lot from us. We're probably the most resilient people in the world. You're a conflict dynamics accredited commercial mediator. That is quite a mouthful. You're also an appointed as a trustee of the Nelson Mandela Foundation. What is your work involved on that front?
So the commercial mediation was something that I did through conflict dynamics. I thought that it would be another sort of some professional qualification that one could have. And it was a very interesting course. And so it's co-run, well, it's run by Conflict Dynamics, but it gives you accreditation to mediate on matters in South Africa and also in London, in the UK. But I haven't actually gone into mediation. I think what it helped is it was a good course in terms of understanding conflict, understanding how to bring people together and to facilitate things and to be a better listener. So I think from that perspective, it was a very good and useful exercise. I don't think that at sometime in the future, I'm going to abandon everything and go into being a full-time mediator. That's not the point of it. But it was another professional qualification. And, I think one always needs to be able to add things, not to your professional sort of basket, and not to stagnate. And I thought the course was very useful, and also met very many interesting people doing interesting things in law, in commerce, and so on. The Nelson Mandela Foundation, as a trustee, I think it's a great honour to have been asked to serve on this board, which is led by Professor Njabula Ndebele as chair. And it is a great honour to be tasked with protecting the legacy that Madiba has left us. And it's so as a trustee, one has oversight over obviously the not the day-to-day running of the organisation, but the governance and so on. And so it is an immense honour. It's very important, Mike. I think in South Africa, we often, because we're a country where so much is happening and where we have to keep focusing on everything that is now, we find it quite difficult, to look back and then to learn the lessons of the past. And part of the Mandela Foundation is precisely about that, about dialogue, but also the memory against forgetting. And I feel very strongly that, all of us, we have the responsibility to educate the next generation about what has gone before, the sacrifices that were made, but also the mistakes that were made, so that we can build a country which is better, which is stronger, and a democracy which we can be proud of.
Take us inside the locker room, so to speak, if you can. You were on the interim board of Cricket South Africa. How was that experience? Sport administration, a Jill of all trades, a lot more difficult than people think?
It's I love cricket, Mike. So that's the other thing that I love. Test cricket. I mean, I'm not such a fan of the white ball, but there you go. And so I love cricket. I have a passion for cricket. I come from a cricket-loving family on both sides. My father was a cricketer. He played in the Lancashire Leagues. Of course, there was apartheid, and so, one never knows how that might have panned out. But so we're passionate cricket lovers. And so for a long time, I'd been very concerned about what was happening within the game. And not unlike institutions in South Africa, cricket had become captured by a group of people who were out for their own interests, and there was financial and other abuse and misappropriation and so on. And so this board that I sat on was the interim board, and it was an intervention by the Minister of Sport, Nathi Mthethwa. And it's quite interesting because Nathi Mthethwa gets a lot of bad press because, the flag issue and all of that. But in the interim cricket board, he actually, to his credit, he left our board and he said, go and sort it out. We had a limited mandate, go and sort out cricket and, let me know what happens. So there was no intervention. It was an independent board. I have renewed respect for anybody going into an organisation in South Africa and trying to fix it, because what we found as an interim board was, we came in with a lot of gusto. You come in, new broom, sweep clean, and then you find out that there is this detritus in the organisation of people who don't want to, are resistant to change, who are resistant to the cleanup, and who do everything possible to stymie the end result. To stymie, our end result was to change the constitution of Cricket South Africa so that we have a majority independent board, so you could take away the strangleholds of of the provinces, and also those people who were on the board who just didn't have the skill to run the modern game. But also within the management of cricket in South Africa, there'd been individuals appointed who, were simply not up to the task. And they did everything they could to stymie our work. And so it was a frustrating period. There were many late night meetings. It was difficult work. And it reminded me of the David Axelrod, who was Barack Obama's special advisor. When he became president, he gave him a plaque, and it's to put on his desk, and it said, "Hard things are hard." Well, this was a hard thing. And so it at the end of it, it was also a work of passion, and it was hard work. So all of us were doing it because we loved cricket. We wanted to see it succeed. We had a limited time frame, but it was very difficult. We managed at the end to get the result that we needed to get, and that was great. And then to hand over to a new board to pick up the cudgels. But as I said, I have renewed respect for anyone going into an organization in South Africa. So Andre de Ruyter, all of these individuals trying to clean things up, you will be met with resistance. And it is difficult work. But it turned out to be 8 months, from 3 months to 6 months to 8 months. And it was probably, I would say, one of the most rewarding things I have done. And I met wonderful South Africans along the way, people who were my colleagues on the board. And also we had one single goal. And I'd like to think that we left cricket in a better position. And also we hope that the new board can build on that. But it was one of the most fulfilling professional things that I have done. And I'm proud of the work that our board did during that time.
Let's move on. I want to ask you what you think about where South Africa would be without the public watchdogs, the NGOs, the civil society organizations, the media, the lobby groups. Dare I say it, the country would be teetering on failed state status, were it not for these bodies. Your thoughts?
I think that's absolutely right. And so, Mag, I think so often, there's been a lot of talk about, is South Africa a failed state, all of that. But so often we are obsessed with the ruling party, and we should be, because they hold the power, the ANC holds the power, and it has, what happens within the ANC matters, the internal factionalism, all of that matters. But we're very concerned about that all the time. But we lose sight of the fact that a democracy is about more than the political parties that we vote into power. Democracy is about citizens. Democracy is about us. But it's also about building institutions and building networks of action within a society. You can't have a democracy where people only vote every 5 years and then abdicate all responsibility and to the political party. We have seen, because we've been let down again and again by politicians, that it really is, the work is up to us. And so without civil society organizations like the Adasas that I worked for, a host of organizations, too many to mention, and also a free press, a media that is constantly chipping away, constantly asking questions. The investment into investigative journalism by so many news organizations. These are the tools of democracy. And we must not forget the judiciary, who stood up to tremendous pressure. If you look at what's happening in the United States, for example, our constitutional court has held the line. You might not always agree with what the courts have said or done, but it has held the line when it mattered most. So I dare say our robust civil society, our media, the judiciary, these institutions are important. They are the lifeblood of democracy. And our commitment, I think, as a society to transparent, open information, for people to get the information. We are flooded with information. This is a good thing. And so I think we would be in a much worse place. It's a credit to the people who are fighting for this democracy on the front line.
So you've joined Freedom Under Law. at a crucial time in our democracy. Freedom Under Law is an organization with phenomenal pedigree, with Justice Johan Krichler. How are you feeling about having taken over from Nicole Fritz? What's your greatest hurdle, and what are you looking to overcome? What's on your radar?
Well, Mike, it's early days, and first to say that Nicole Fritz did a great job. So I'm filling in. I'm stepping into her large shoes, and she is one of the individuals who works tirelessly on issues of the rule of law. And so it's been great to kind of be able to build on the work that she's done to build an organization, which is what she did at Freedom Under Law. But it also has a very strong board and a very active chair in Justice Johan Krichler, who is, dare I say, still as sharp as he was when he was on the bench. So it's a privilege to be able to head up an institution, organization at a pivotal moment in South Africa's democracy, at a difficult moment. I think the challenge for an organization like Freedom Under Law is primarily we use public interest litigation to challenge issues. And also there's been a lot of historic work on the Judicial Service Commission, for example. How well does it work? How badly does it work? The appointment of the judiciary, the ethical conduct, and so on. And that the work itself, Mike, the work itself is the challenge, because how one relates to the institution like the JSC, there is a new Chief Justice, and so we remain cautiously optimistic about the future of that body. But at the same time, there are great pressures, both on the Constitutional Court and on the JSC. We'll have a new Deputy Chief Justice soon. And so the way in which one relates to those institutions in this very tricky period, I think is going to be important. And I think also part of the leadership of an organization like this is to help people understand what it is we're doing and why we're doing it. So when we talk about an independent judiciary and we talk about a country, a democracy undergirded by openness, transparency, and the rule of law, why is that important? It's not just a nice to have. We want to try and join the dots there between that and the fact that people are not getting water. If the rule of law breaks down, there are all kinds of socioeconomic, as we see in our country every day, repercussions to that. So this is not just about people and personalities. It's about a system. It's about protecting and defending the Constitution. And so that the work will be the challenge, because there are many forces out there that don't want organizations like ourselves to exist or to succeed. And there are many others. And also I think one of the aims is also to be able to build networks across civil society organizations, that we are in this together, and where we can work together to be able to do that, and to use each other's resources, broadly put, to be able to create a bulwark against those who would want to tear down the edifice of our democracy. So it's early days yet, but I think the organisation, there's much to be done in all the sites of governance, whether it's with the judiciary or even at Parliament. If we look at the potential impeachment of Judge President Hlophe, Parliament will be an important part of that puzzle, and how that process is explained to people, to the public, how we interact with Parliament is going to be crucial. So there are very many innovative ways that I think all of us within civil society are thinking of in order to protect and defend the democracy that we have.
Okay, I'm going to speak to Judith, the political analyst, now for a second. A week is a long time in politics. You're no doubt aware of that expression, and what a week it has been. Ramaphosa's millions in dollars stashed in a couch, allegedly, and the Gupta brothers getting arrested all in 1 week. You couldn't have scripted this. Let's start with President Ramaphosa. What do you make of Arthur Fraser? What do you make of these allegations?
Well, Mike, it's an interesting one. One has to exercise caution, because we only have one affidavit on record, and the president freewheeling in Limpopo and saying, I didn't steal any money and so on. I also wish that the president would, that at some point when he does that it's in my view not a good idea, because I think that one wants to, in that situation where he's clearly in a tricky situation, to control the narrative. But that aside, the president does have questions to answer, and I think we need to be very careful about what is going on here. So firstly we understand that the last part of the Zondo Commission report is going to be coming out, that there will be findings about the State Security Agency and Arthur Fraser's role in that. So this is trying to say that people are the radical economic transformers, that faction of the ANC, they are gearing up because they need to. And so there's all manner of propaganda out there and untruth and the sowing of chaos, right? And so that nobody knows what to believe anymore because there's so much chaos. We also know that Ramaphosa is fighting for his political life. He has to win a second term in December at the ANC's elective conference. So all of this we understand that. That aside, it's very tempting to say, well, Arthur Fraser is a bad guy, and so therefore, he's got a bit of a dodgy reputation, so therefore we must discount what is said, and we believe the president wholeheartedly. I think we must not take off our thinking caps, and we need to interrogate what it is that he says. And there are certainly many questions, and unfortunately what he has said has given rise to more questions than answers. He said, for example, in Limpopo, I didn't steal any money. Well, nobody's accusing him of doing so. There are questions around Reserve Bank regulations with regard to foreign exchange, around a cover-up. There are questions around tax, for example. It is going to, Mike, put a great deal of pressure on all of these institutions, the Reserve Bank, the Revenue Service, and also the NPA, at a very difficult time. So we're at a dangerous moment here. But I do think that we can't suspend our thinking just because we think that President Ramaphosa is, the most reasonable bet compared to a kind of basket of deplorables. We need to carry on asking the questions, and I'm glad that the media is. So I think the president has real questions to answer, and I don't think that kind of laughing it off is good enough. He needs to come clean. Of course, there's been a complaint lodged now, and he might give him time to obviously put together his defence, whatever that may be. I think we need to keep an open mind. But I found the story rather worrying. Because usually where there's smoke, there's fire. So my instinct tells me that it's a troublesome story.
Most political analysts we speak to will say Ramaphosa is assured of a second term come December. Does a story like this dent that assurity, or are we still in the same position? This is just a potential deflection from the RET forces. Look, there is an element of deflection because, of course, this happened in 2020 and here we are now, and suddenly the story arises out of nowhere. But my personal view is that I think that the president will win a second term, and those are sort of one of those predictions. One is probably going to come back to haunt one. But I do think that is still the likely outcome here. But I think we need to look further than that because and it's important, obviously, who the president of the country is. But because, again, to go back to the point of being so obsessed with internal ANC politics, we need to be working on the future. We need to be able to start to look beyond the ANC. This party is essentially unfit for purpose. It is a corrupt vehicle. And all we are doing is you're sort of shuffling deck chairs on the Titanic of an organization that is actually dead. And Ramaphosa, for all his talk about unity, it is a fallacy. There is no unity within the ANC. People are tearing each other apart, over the carcass, over spoils of state capture and contracts and so on. So it is an unedifying spectacle, in my view, all of it. But Ramaphosa didn't win Nasrec without
certain compromises. There are rumors of, does money change hand at ANC conferences and so on. And so I believe that he will win a second term. But the degradation of our democracy is what we should be worrying about. And unfortunately, that happens. And also, you have a situation where there's a country to run, but there's very little of that going on because everybody is navel gazing to just get past the next provincial conference and the next national conference. It is a really unsatisfactory state of affairs, if I can put it mildly.
Let's cast our gaze a little further afield. Very welcome news, I'd say. A statement dropping from the Department of Justice and Correctional Services at 8:10 last night. Wow. As somebody who's been sitting in that commission for years, writing about the Guptas, jeepers, it was astonishing to me. I honestly didn't see it coming. What do you think, Judith?
Well, I was surprised, yes. And of course, there have been talks around Interpol, Gupta's on a red list, etc. So this is good news, Mike. And again, it just when I read the news, it sort of got me thinking about the contradictions of South Africa. We have the president who's in a bit of trouble with these allegations, and then of course you have the good news of the Guptas' arrest. And so, it's almost as if symbolic of how we live with some good news and some bad news, and it's up and it's down, and it's typical of sort of living here. Of course, this is the first step in a very long process, and I'm quite sure the Guptas will, with whatever money they have left that has been captured from our kitty, will do their best to try to, use the legal Stalingrad. They have plenty of examples here in South Africa from their friends, and so it will be a long road. But the symbolism of it, I think, is important, and that crime doesn't pay, and that eventually things do catch up with you, and so the symbolism of it is important, no matter how long it takes to actually launch a successful prosecution. So the NPA has a lot on its plate, and it's particularly on the 15th when the final Zondo Commission report is going to land. So there's a lot going on, but it was done systematically, and this is a good thing. And it shows that institutions are still working despite everything, which I think is a good thing.
Cautiously optimistic, I'm hearing there. What is it with South Africans who are unable to walk and chew gum at the same time? If you look at Ramaphosa, then in one aspect, and the Guptas in another, they say, no, Ramaphosa engineered this. This is a deflection away from Glencore, away from the millions in cash and the cover-up. The whataboutism, Judith, it gets to me. It gets to me.
Yes. Mike, because two things can be true at the same time, but we don't really seem to accept that. And there's no place for nuance in public debate a lot of the time. And so sometimes it's better to only, not engage with all of it. But this is not a peculiarly South African phenomenon. I mean, if you look at what's happening around the world, if you look at what's happening in England, in the US, in terms of their politics, there is a lot of the strains of this. I mean, democracy around the world is in crisis. And so we need to keep focused. And we need to understand that the work is up to us. But really, South Africans have a unique ability to be on incredible highs and then incredible lows. We see that in sport and so on. It is part of our national psyche. And, the myths about countries. Australia is the lucky country and so on. We are, I don't know what our moniker would be, but we tend to be a little bit schizophrenic, and that's part of living here. And it is just part and parcel of the complexity of this place. But as I say, democracy is in crisis around the world. And, what replaces it? I mean, I read an article this week by Ed Luce in the Financial Times talking about, is America headed to civil war? Now, that sounds completely a very outrageous thing to say, but he makes a very interesting case for people turning on each other in such a way. So we really do our great democratic experiment, and it was just that. We need to be protecting it, and I think we do better at it sometimes than we give ourselves credit for. That we are still robust, and we're still out there caring about things. If we stop caring and we stopped the noise, that would be a problem, I think.
Well, it's a great pleasure to chat to you, Judith, finally. And dare I say it, I think it was serendipitous that we had so many back and forths. Otherwise, exactly. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to chat right on the tail end of this news, this very significant news, whether it's about Ramaphosa or the Guptas. Thank you for your time, Judith.
Thanks very much, Michael. Lovely to chat to you.